Have you ever wondered if God was speaking to you? Have you ever had something happen and wonder, is this a fluke or is this a sign? Is God trying to get a message to me? This past weekend, I was away at a conference and I stayed at an Airbnb to save a little bit of money to not stay on site. And on the second morning, I was getting into my car to go to the conference at the same time that my neighbor, a stranger, was getting into her car. So we started chatting, and it turns out we were going to the same conference. And I asked her how she heard about it and what brought her there. And she said, I heard about it, and I decided, bad timing, I'm not going to go. She said, and then the next 3 days, one of the main speakers at the conference was coming up in conversation without any reason. It just kept happening. Oh, once again. Oh, that's funny. That happened again. Oh, and now again. She said on the third day, I was out for a run in a neighborhood of Brooklyn where I live. She said, and I saw a pile of giveaway books, so I thought maybe I'll get a bargain. And I leaned down, and the first book on the pile was by the author who's leading the conference. So I went home and signed up. Don't you love a story like that? That's exactly how it works. But it's easy to miss signs like that. Oh, that's weird. Is that just the power of suggestion? Is that just a fluke? That's one advantage that the apostles had in the story we just heard, is there was no mistaking that this was a major faith event in their lives, that the Spirit was there. They didn't have to say, wow, do you think that might have been the Holy Spirit? Yeah, you think? Like fire on your head and wind blowing through and you speaking languages you've never spoken? Yeah, that was something. In our lives, it's often a lot more subtle. And so we have to be willing to pay attention to the subtleties. One thing that can get our attention is if we're hearing something that doesn't fit our normal pattern. You know, if we always order a steak when we go to a restaurant, and one night we're at one of our favorites, and a little voice says, get the salad instead. That's interesting, because that doesn't fit what we want to do. Have you ever been walking into a store and heard the bell ringing and got your wallet out to put $1 in the kettle? And maybe a voice might say, put a 20 in. And you think, no way, I was going to put a quarter in. Then I upped it to $1. Sometimes you're in the middle of a fight, often with family, maybe with a partner, whoever it is, and you think of that one zinger that's going to get it. You can drop this bomb and walk away, and a little voice says, don't say it. Those are the moments. It's when it goes against what you would normally want to do. Your personality is going to reinforce all of our wants. But the Spirit is often going to challenge what we would normally do. Do it differently. Not this time. Hold back. Don't assume that you can trust your emotions on this one. And those are very subtle little messages. But once we notice this trend, we can start to feel guided. A woman was telling me that there was a big problem in her family that was the elephant in the room, and nobody was talking about it. And she didn't even want to know about it, to be honest. She was in denial. And she said, but she kept having this thought in her head. And she was trying to ignore it. And then at one point, she said, oh, this is all in my mind. And then she said, but wait a minute. If it's in my mind and I don't want it there, and every effort I make to get rid of it doesn't work, is there a chance it's from God instead? And it was that allowed her to accept it. That's what broke her denial. Wait a minute, if I'm trying to get rid of this thought, then it's not my thought. Maybe I need to pay attention to it. The holy thing for us to do is to give the Spirit permission to direct us. It's one thing to say, I'll notice if the Spirit's directing me and I'll make my choice. But when we're at a further stage of our growth, we might say, I've come to see that all of my best thinking has gotten me not very far. And God, you know so much more than I do. You know. So it's a holy thing when we have the humility to say, take the wheel. I want you to direct me. One author says it this way: it's one thing to ask for signs from God. It's another thing to ask for commands. Command me, God. It's like I dream of Jeannie. Your wish is my command. That's a next level of holiness thing to do. And it's dangerous. We have to be brave if we're going to do that. Because we have to ask ourselves, do I really want God tinkering under the hood? Do I really want to be directed with things like where I give my money, what my job is, how I interact with my neighbors, all of that? That takes courage. But it is the courage that we're being called to consider, especially on a day when we are remembering those stories of when the Spirit has guided us. Something we have to remember is that we have no control over the volume of the Spirit's voice. We don't get to turn the knob up. We can only turn ourselves down. And if the voice is coming in a whisper, we're going to have to get quiet to hear it. It would be easy to drown it out. So it's natural for us to want the voice to be louder. But this is the trick that those who listen to the Spirit know. The more you listen, like any exercise, it strengthens the muscle. So the voice becomes louder. And I found myself wondering, is it really louder or am I quieter? I don't know. But the voice becomes louder, and it becomes the motivation to always follow, because you don't want to lose that voice. It would be like having your GPS go offline. Have you ever been in a rural area and all of a sudden it's just recalculating for a long time and you feel so abandoned? How am I gonna, what happens if there's a road out? And that's a good thing to remember, that if we want to stay connected to the Spirit, then we have to be willing to stay online. And the way to do that is to get as quiet as possible. Sometimes the Spirit does incredible things to intervene. And maybe you've had experiences like that. I heard one recently from a woman in our parish that just blew me away. She was walking her dog this winter along the Hudson River. And if you're a pet lover, you'll understand how hard this is. And it's a little bit of a hard story to hear. She was walking along, and this dog was loving this walk, just frolicking. She was freezing. But a duck flew in front of them and then flew out over the river. And the dog got loose and followed the duck. And out over the river, the woman watched in horror as the dog and the duck leaped over this ice. And the dog got out there and then realized his mistake. But it was too late. And as he's in the water, she's panicking. And her life flashes before her eyes. She's thinking of how much her kids love this dog. She's thinking of what a comfort this dog is to everybody. She was a young widow, and so this dog got them through the loss of her husband. It was a very, very important pet. And she turns rationality offline, and she starts taking off layers on a freezing winter day. She's taking one layer off and then another, and she's saying to herself, I've got to get this dog. I've got to get this dog. And all of a sudden, she felt arms on her shoulders jerking her back. And she heard, no, don't do it. You won't make it. You can't go. And she said, I have to go. And the voice said no and called her by name. It was only then that she realized that the person who happened to be there that moment was the father of her childhood best friend, who was 90 years old and happened to be on a walk at that exact stretch of the river at that moment. Later, she found out that another woman did the same thing and went out to get the dog on the ice 2 years ago and died. So that voice, that presence that was there, why would that 90-year-old father of a childhood friend be there? The Holy Spirit can shout to get our attention, but we can't rely on that. And we don't want to have to wait till the circumstances of our life are so extreme that we have to rely on the Spirit shouting. So this week, you and I are asked, how can we sharpen our listening to the Spirit? How can we attune ourselves better? If we can't turn the Spirit's volume up, what can we do to turn our volume down? Is it sitting for 5 minutes in the morning with quiet and prayer? Is it pausing at night to review the day? What would it look like to make a little bit of space and a little bit of quiet? If you're somebody who's already done that and you're looking for the next step, what would it look like to offer obedience to that voice? To say, I don't want signs, I want commands. You show me what to do and I'll do it. You tell me what to do and I will follow it. And before you know it, if we were to do that, we'll start signing up for the conference we didn't plan to go to. We'll bite our tongue even when we have a perfect zinger and mic drop in the middle of the fight. We might even increase the size of our tips that we give. And before you know it, we'll be ordering the salad.